So I had a problem to solve. My problem to solve was powering all of my telecom equipment. That would be my video cameras, my DVR, my switch, my modem, and my router, right? And I could just go get a UPS. When the UPS loses power, what happens? You know, you get beeps. All the beeps, excuse me, as I go into the darkness here. There we go. It's annoying. I wanted something that would mostly power itself by solar, but then if my solar was a little undersized, I wanted it to have a backup. And of course, I am a bit addicted to DIY batteries right now, so I had to do something a little bit more interesting. Here's what I ended up with. What we've got here is I solved my issue of having to replace batteries every few years in the UPS, right? This is a lithium titanate, an LTO battery, which has a advertised life cycle count of something like 50,000. That's gonna last my lifetime. No problem there. I've got another video of hooking up this BMS to it. This BMS is certainly overkill for what I'm wanting to do, but it's a smart BMS, so I can monitor things. I've got a 1 kilowatt hour, 24 volt lithium titanate battery going through my Ant Smart BMS. I can view the status of my battery right here and all my cells. I can see my cell voltages. From my BMS, I go into a golf cart buck converter. So it's supposed to be 36 to 48 volts down to 12 volts. It works going 24 volts down to 12 volts. So it's running just fine. This runs to my little fuse box here. And then from there, I've got multiple circuits coming off. One circuit goes to this boost converter to run all of my power over Ethernet devices. They require 48 volts coming off of this switch up here. I've got that providing 48 volts into the PoE circuit here on the switch, and yes, this is all a bit proof of concept at the moment. I need to hardwire it all in. Then the other thing I've got here is a 12 volt to 5 volt buck converter, and that runs a 5 volt circuit on the switch right up in there. And then I've got another circuit that is 12 volts to power the 12 volt circuit in the switch. So the switch required 3 different voltages, 5, 12, and 48 volts. And then on top of that, I've got a circuit coming over to my modem, my Linksys modem, that is a 12 volt modem. I just hacked the cord that plugged into the back and plugged it straight into my fuse panel, and that gives it 12 volts. And that brings me to my router, which was also a 12 volt device. So that was easy enough. Just ran it off of a separate circuit. I've got most of these all on separate circuits, separate fuses, just to try and keep everything safe and modular. The last thing I did was, how do you provide the power to the battery, right? So you're powering everything off the battery. So now the simple part is, what do you use to power the battery? And that's how, like with the UPS, right, you can get your power from the grid to charge the battery, and then when the grid goes down, you've got the battery to power your devices. What I did is I have a solar charge controller here running out to a single panel, single 300 watt solar panel. And it's flat mounted, so it doesn't provide near the 300 watts that it should. And it's not quite enough to keep this going during the day and charge the battery fully. A kilowatt hour is enough to get through the night if the solar panel will be able to charge it up all the way. Now, if I hit multiple cloudy days, that's going to be a problem. So what I did is went ahead and got myself a 24 volt power supply. So now I'm also plugged into the grid. So at night, when the battery gets too low, this power supply will take over and keep things at, you can see here that my battery charge is at about 5%. And that's because we've gone overnight, the battery has drained, and then this grid power supply has taken over. A few advantages here. One, I've got a much higher cycle count on this battery than I do with, say, UPS lead acid batteries. Two, most of my power comes from solar, not from the grid. When this is plugged in and the solar is providing all of the power, it goes down to consuming about 1 watt. And it actually consumes most of that off of the battery and the solar, not off of the grid, oddly enough. So yes, this is a mess, but it provides me 2 power sources to the one battery, through a BMS to keep things protected and give me monitoring, into a 24 volt down to 12 volt buck converter into a fuse box into the 3 different voltages I need. The 5 volts for the switch, 12 volts for my router, modem, switch, and 48 volts going into the switch as well to power my things like my DVR, my video cameras, my access points, and whatnot. And this whole thing takes about 50 or 60 watts to run, which I think is pretty efficient. And that's a slightly lower number than it took when I was plugged into the grid. I plugged my kilowatt meter in and had all of this running on AC, and it was about 60 watts that it was taking. Running it all on DC instead of using all of the bricks that come with all the different devices, I save a little bit, and I think that's about 10% running on DC, which helps a little bit with the solar because I don't need quite as much solar if I'm running a little more efficient. So that's what I did to solve my problem of a UPS that I don't have to replace the batteries in all the time. If the power goes out in the afternoon or evening, then I might want to shut some things down so that I've got some battery power in the morning. But another panel would fix that easy, right? Or just swap this 300 watt out for maybe a 400 watt panel and I would be fine. So that's one little project I've been working on and is at least up and running. I've had this running for a few weeks and it's been kicking very well. Catch you next time on Bean Energy.